Hello, Jennifer Brown.
Hello, Jenn T. Grace. How's it going?
Not too bad. How about you?
Yeah, happy fall's coming. It's occurring whether we like it or not.
I feel like it definitely feels like fall, at least here in like New England Northeast, where you start the morning and you're freezing, and then all of a sudden you start hot flashing and sweating out of nowhere because it's not actually fall; it's still summer and it's hot.
It's so true. And I got a sore throat like right when the weather changed, which is like, yep, hoping it's not COVID. Hello.
Please, don't do that. Universe.
I know. Yeah, you have to wonder. You start to feel weird, and oh goodness. But anyway, we've made it to fall. This is good. Cause for celebration. Every day is an accomplishment.
Which I do believe this week might make 6 months that we've been doing these videos.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So much.
Which I am grateful and happy that we've been doing this consistently throughout. However, the fact that it is 6 months and we are nowhere near an end in sight is not that great, because when we started it, we didn't really know how long we would be doing this or how long it would last. Okay. And here we are, probably in it for quite some time.
And it's still going to keep going.
It sure is. It sure is. Well, I'm excited, as I always am. I feel like I overuse that phrase, but I feel like I'm really excited to talk to Sarah today. Hello, Sarah.
Hi. Hello, so good to be here.
Yeah, I feel like we have such a large ground to potentially cover in our conversation today. So before we get into any of the things, Sarah, I would love if you just kind of introduce yourself and kind of give people a little bit of a background of who you are.
Sure. So Sarah Bodley, I am currently the Executive Director of Reset Social Enterprise Trust in Hartford, Connecticut, where we support social enterprises. We help folks that are starting up new businesses to make sure that they're leading and building with purpose and mission built in from the beginning. And this is something that I've personally been passionate about for, I would have to say, all my life, even though I didn't start out in this space. I was a dancer originally and did a lot of arts management early in my career. But when I discovered this world of impact and business and, the many overlaps, it just immediately resonated with me. And so it's been amazing to actually be here in this area for the last few years supporting this work. And I have to say out the gate that the reason I'm here is I completely believe that business has an immense role to play in making the world a better place. And that's been just more and more evident the last 6 months or so. But that's why I'm here. And I'm grateful to be hanging out with you both this morning.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And so for context, so Sarah, you and I know each other on the local level here in Hartford, and we have been brainstorming to great lengths for well over a year at this point of just all of the beauty and magic that can occur when we focus on just kind of the purpose-driven organization, specifically around B Corps in particular. So I feel like when we started our conversation, I remember our first conversation we had, you had asked me, or somehow B Corps came up, and I was like, oh yeah, I started the process, and then I was like, no, I'm going to come back to this later. And so I waited like a solid, probably, I think it was over a year before I like re-picked up the project of becoming a B Corp again. And finally that happened in May of this year, but we're actually just announcing it now, which is super exciting. And it's in collaboration with you and Reset, which I feel like I owe much to your encouragement of like, because I feel like our brainstorming, we're just all over the place in terms of like how much amazingness exists on a local level and then of course just globally. But I think just having somebody to be like, all right, did you do it yet? Are you going to do it? Did you do it? And now here we are. So I think
well, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think that's one of the challenges that we hear all the time too, is that it's hard to embed mission and purpose into your business when you're also needing to, survive financially. And that's, right now, especially, so many businesses are really struggling, but at the same time, it's just great. It's beautiful to see how many folks are also coming out with things in response to COVID or in response to the racial inequities that we're all feeling right now. And, in a way, we're all kind of doing it naturally. And Jen, one thing I think since day one, what's been fun with you is that it's been your mission from the beginning. So it was a lot easier to kind of hold that accountability up. But it's not easy, and I think that's exactly why we're here, is to kind of help folks really think through, how do I do this? How do I actually get to where I want to be from an impact perspective. And, using tools like this that are really, really great, really thorough, but certainly take a lot of time and effort to really prioritize. So yeah, I love that we're here a year later, and I'm so excited that you got your certification done too. That's phenomenal.
It's good stuff. And based on who you work with, so just kind of even giving a little bit more information around kind of like Reset and what Reset does. Yeah. But I know that for me, getting through the B Corp process did feel, it was very labor intensive, I'm not going to lie, but I had all of the things quasi there. I just had to find a way to put them together for B Lab to understand, like in terms of their metrics. But is it some like blanket statement to say that the companies or organizations that you're working with that are in the startup phase, if they just have that kind of baked in from the start, that it is inherently going to be easier and create potentially a bigger and more impact if they just kind of do it from the very start?
That is part of our theory. Yeah, I think, again, no question, running a business is hard. Starting a business is hard. There's no way around that. You're not going to, there's no magic solution, right? Like, we all know this there, and that's, not the claim that we're trying to make. But I absolutely think, this is a definite trend in the last few decades. There's been just so many more companies that are really building from that purpose perspective from day one. You look at like a company like Patagonia. I love Patagonia for all kinds of reasons, but they were really founded because it was a bunch of rock climbers and surfers that wanted to, have great materials, have great supplies that they needed for their passions, and they've built the business around those values from day one. And that still shows today. So I do believe that, if you kind of can identify and really stay clear on those values at the beginning, it does make it that much easier when you're in a position as you build your structures, to just kind of put it on paper if that's what it takes. And that's something we've seen a few times with other clients that are starting this certification process for B Corp. Is you probably are doing good already. If you're thinking about this, you probably are treating people pretty well. You probably have connections to your community. You probably have some good policies and ways of communicating with your team, but you may not have had a chance to actually put that into formal policy and write it down, which is one of the big barriers to getting the certification, because you need to be able to prove it and back it up. And obviously as you grow, then having that is just going to help you, to keep it incorporated and keep systemically kind of including that as you go. But at the outset, it can be hard. So yeah, again, I think one of the things that we're trying to do, and we have a bunch of different programs that we, try to support with. One is our accelerator, and that's, it's a pretty intensive program. And regardless of whether you're going to do certification or not, it's a great fit for somebody who's kind of in their first few years of business and trying to grapple with this kind of thing while growing a business. So one thing we do early on is we do a life map exercise where we look at how did you get here, and really digging into what are those purposes and values behind that. And then we also look forward and think, where do you want to be at the end or at some, indefinite future point? And it's a really helpful way to start people really honing in on what matters the most at this point and how that's going to inform where you end up.
Jen, I feel like, to me, just on the outside, not as, I support DEI practitioners through publishing books and such, but you being in this field for, over a decade at this, almost 15 years, I feel like there's such a similar like overlap between what we're talking about in terms of the impacts of being intentional about your mission and values and your contributions across the board within your business, but then how that would actually wouldn't that be great if it put you out of business, that like there was no need for diversity training anymore? Like how great would that be? However, Lord, that's nowhere near our lifetime. But as I'm listening, I'm thinking like, wow, I didn't really put it fully together until you were asking Sarah questions off camera of, like, what is that connection between being a B Corp and the diversity, equity, inclusion? Because I would venture a guess that any B Corp has a very strong DEI policy or initiatives, just from having to go through it myself as someone with a very small team. Like, they ask very rigorous questions around just your diversity policies and practices, as well as your supply chain. So I'm kind of curious, like, I don't know, like, what's coming up for you, Jenn, as like Sarah's talking about, like the impacts and benefits that are there.
Yeah, thanks, Jenn. Well, it's always struck me that the corporate social responsibility world, just to put this in the big company context, it doesn't they're siloed over here, and diversity, equity, inclusion is siloed over here, and there's all these silos that actually really need to intersect much more deeply, because sustainable business to me means that we sustain our people, because our people are our biggest assets. And when we traditionally, though, think about the CSR world, we talk about the environment, we talk about other sort of assets in that respect. And so, but the reputation these days too is such a huge question. You know, what are companies doing? What are their values, and how do they talk about it? And do the people in the organization believe those? If you ask them, do we walk the talk? You know, we say all this, we get all these awards, we're on all these lists, you know, they may even be a B Corp. I mean, perish the thought. And then you may be speaking to somebody about their experience, and it may be very different. And so, you know, sometimes I'm grateful for certifications. Sometimes I'm wary of them, because sometimes your work isn't done even though you have a certification, right? Because I think we think about lists is one thing, but lived sort of cultural day-to-day reality in an organization is something different. So anyway, that's sort of a rant / riff on, you know, the fact that I always think things need to overlap more, to use your point, Jenn, and that I asked, you know, is the B Corp certification sort of upping its criteria, given what we've learned and what we've been shown this summer? That is much more specific. That is much more hard hitting, I would say. That's much more rigorous. And I'm sure they are, because most criteria are always refreshing, right? We have an index for the LGBTQ community called the Corporate Equality Index, right? The HRC CEI, and they're upping their criteria every 2 years. And so 100%ers no longer have 100% unless they keep up with that. So it's just curious. I guess there's not a question in there, Sarah, just I think that these worlds can push the D&I conversation along. And I'm sure you've seen how that has happened with companies making choices about founding teams and funders and boards of directors, and like how to make sure we're sort of diversifying and we have inclusion from the start. And then we build from this more healthy place, this more comprehensive, more inclusive place, which makes it so much easier than what I see, which is, oh my goodness, we're scrambling because we haven't really thought about this before. Now what do we do to sort of undo everything and start on a new path? And that is like way harder than getting it right the first time. So you must believe B Corp is a way to kind of set the foundation in the right way, and then build from there, I would assume.
Yeah, well, I would say, I mean, I think it's always been a really, you know, again, we've talked about it, it's a tough one. So they're really asking a lot of deep questions, which is one of the things I've appreciated about it. I know that they did refresh their, you know, they have a whole team that's, you know, like with so many, are constantly looking at all the indicators and everything. And I also know that they're one of their co-founders, or not co-founders, sorry, co-leads in North America has put out some really beautiful statements lately. And there's a real rally coming through. And I think that's another beauty of, I mean, not just the B Corp community, although that is a huge reason for that, but generally like mission-driven, conscious capitalist companies, you know, often I think there's a solidarity that comes through that too, and a real community of support for each other, and of like acknowledging and recognizing where we collectively can do better. You know, and so I've seen some really great, you know, on the B Labs website, there's all kinds of great content, and I think they even have a Medium channel. You know, they're global, so they have a great presence and have had some really amazing content coming out that really highlights the way that a lot of their companies, a lot of the certified companies are responding and adapting. And I want to actually just circle back to something you said a minute ago, Jenn, about, you know, the fact that people are assets. And I think we've gotten away, you know, as a economy, as a society, I think like we did get away from the way that we think about assets. And we've gotten so entrenched in this, you know, always just focusing on the short term, the next big, shareholder report that has to come out. And that is just it's not at all surprising to me that we have all of these unintended consequences that came out of that. I doubt that the people setting things up that way were thinking, oh, we really should, keep people down. I mean, I won't even get into, maybe there were some people thinking that way, but, ultimately, I don't think, there are intentions that go wrong all the time. And that's, part of, I think, what we're now trying to get away from. But it's something that I really appreciate about having these conversations and having frameworks like this and others that really look at the ripple effect of, making some of these changes to think differently about how we think about human beings at the center of all that we do is really important and kind of simple when you break it down that way. I mean, and there's
revolutionary too.
Yeah, and there's so many ways to do it. I think that people can get stuck sometimes too, thinking like, well, I have to fit into this box or that box in terms of the actions I'm taking. But there's also just entrepreneurs are creative people. So, you see these amazing examples. One, I love Grayston Bakery. If you're not familiar, check them out in Yonkers. They actually bake the brownies that are in Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So you may know them that way, but they're a B Corp and they've coined a term, open hiring, where they literally, like, anyone can get a job at Grayston Bakery and get the training and get the development tools that they need for their own personal journey. It's kind of tough to get in because they have a waiting list, as you might imagine, but it's this great, model where they have, I forget exactly their tagline, but it's basically that they exist to create jobs, not really, they bake brownies in order to create jobs. It's really not about the brownies, it's about the people.
Cool.
And just shifting that paradigm is so important right now. It's leading towards something that's much bigger than the next widget or the next, shareholder report.
So much needs to change. And how we think about like extraction of value, right? Like just the whole principle of like capitalistic business versus conscious capitalism. And now there's books about it and conferences called Conscious Capitalism Conference, So I do think the Patagonias were super early to the dialogue and did this with no roadmap at all and actually created the roadmap. And now we've got, I think it's super relevant in the startup world, probably generationally too. I would imagine, you probably have a viewpoint on that, but the values of this younger generation are super different. Like, valuing our, not in the extractive mindset, but the restorative, the sustaining mindset, right? Like, how can we be a good actor in the world? How can my values as a person that works for this company align with the values of the company? This is like really new stuff for a lot of sort of the older companies, the bigger companies. Like, we were trying to haul them along into the present to say, like, this really matters to your younger talent, and they want to see, they want to see a demonstration of this, not just to intend, oh, we have these values, but they want to see it in action, and they want to see it outside of the walls of the company. They want to see it in the world. They want to be proud. And I think companies are really challenged with that because it doesn't feel like it's part of the DNA in the past. But startups, I think, are sort of are blazing this path that I hope like big businesses will take the cue to say, oh, we better get on this bandwagon because we want to attract all the best and brightest, and we don't want to take advantage of the world. We want to actually give back to the world, and we want to help with social justice issues. Like, we want to actually use our might to weigh in and change outcomes, right? And that's, again, like, these lenses are really, I feel like for some brands they're like on board, but the majority are like, and actually really terrified of it, actually. And like make mistakes and just watch the news and you'll see how many fumbles there are and apologies and
that's great about organizations like Reset. Like, I feel fortunate that we have Reset here in Hartford, but think about all of the other organizations doing similar work to what you're doing across the country and across the globe. Like, you and your organization have that individual power to help people kind of see the difference and change they can make and be kind of their Sherpa to that better outcome at a later date, which I think is great, because then it just puts people more on the same page as the organization kind of develops and grows.
Yeah. Well, and I love the Sherpa comparison. I mean, that's spot on, because really, like, we really are, we're trying to walk beside you, as you know, on you're the leader of your company. And so really our role here is to kind of open doors where we can, to cheer you on, to hold you accountable, to, you know, add value in whatever way makes the most sense for you. But at the end of the day, I'm like so honored and privileged to be walking alongside such cool companies that are thinking so differently about all of these things. I mean, our alumni just blow my mind every time I see something in the news. It's so exciting. So yeah.
That's awesome.
So I want to switch us just a smidge, and this kind of is like a good segue of just kind of like seeing the companies that you support kind of in the news and what's going on. You are hosting a event coming up in just a few weeks on October 8th. Can you just share some details about, you know, what the event is and what the purpose behind it is?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. And thanks for being a partner in that event, Jen. So this is our annual Beyond Business as Usual conference. Every year we pick a theme and kind of dig in. And this is our first year we're going virtual, as so many folks are. So we're actually extending it slightly in order to have even a bigger conversation. So this year our theme is leading for change. And really what that means is we want to talk about how great leaders are prioritizing purpose and impact. And we want to hear their stories on kind of the ways that they've done that. We do have a handful of great speakers lined up to actually, who many of them are with certified B Corps. So, and some are not, but again, looking at sort of the different structures. So just to give you an idea, we'll be hearing from Lorna Davis, who's the she was with Danone North America for some time, and now she's a B-Lab ambassador. Phenomenal woman who I had a great conversation last week with her. And she herself is really passionate about leadership, and she works with talks with companies all over the world that are grappling with this stuff at a pretty high level. We also have Andre Cherny, who's the co-founder of Aspiration Bank out on the West Coast. I'm bank with them myself, and it's a very new twist on traditional banking, where they actually measure your impact with every purchase you make. It's really cool. So we've got the founder of Vermont Creamery, Allison Hooper, and then we've got somebody actually who's going to speak to worker-owned co-ops, a woman named Carolyn Edsel-Vetter out of the New England Cooperative Fund, which is like a whole different approach, but really ties in beautifully with all of this. So really what we're hoping is that people will walk away feeling like, oh, wow, there's a lot of different ways that I can actually start to think about how I incorporate impact and purpose, and, you know, some tools for the certification, a chance to connect more directly with some of these folks. We're going to have breakouts and roundtables and try to really give folks a chance to connect directly and walk away with some options to take action. And I would also just point out, because Jen Brown, you mentioned this earlier, the transition piece is a big part of this. So one of our panels is really going to be about, like, so if you're already running a great business and you want to transition, how do you do that? Where do you start? So we'll be really digging into that piece, as well as, hearing from these folks that have done it well. So I'm excited that it's virtual, since we then have a chance to, invite a much broader audience, and we'll be able to feature some of these exciting companies.
Yeah, such good stuff. And yeah, for those who are watching or paying attention, like, this is not just, you don't have to be in Connecticut to get value from this. So this is, especially since you do have speakers that are coming from the West Coast and all over the place. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be partnering with you on it, because I think there's just so much goodness in just continuing to have these conversations. So then it just makes all of our lives a little bit easier at a later date and time. And I feel like, it's just a different mindset of, planting the seeds and then I'm going to harvest them later, but, sometimes later takes a little bit of time. We have to be patient, but, I think these conversations are so important. I'm so grateful for the work that you do, Sarah, because this is like your everyday. This is what you do.
I can't even get over how cool it is, actually, that I get to do this every day. So thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Keep up the good work, and thanks for the info on the event. And we'll share that out, Jen, in the comments, maybe on the stream.
Yeah.
And happy to help get the word out, Sarah. Thanks for what you do, and you are building a better future and a better, more conscious business for the future. I mean, inevitably we're going that way. It's just a question of sort of who's lagging behind all of that. But honestly, that you're the future. I mean, it has to be. We can't continue to have an extractive mindset in the way that we build things. And we have to, you know, sustain our people assets as resources, you know, with maybe a capital R, I don't know, small r, but, you know, and not look at them as things to be exploited, but as things to be literally not wanting to wear us out. Imagine how different the world would be if we had that kind of mentality and consciousness in the business world. You know, how much more satisfied we'd all be, how more engaged we would be, more balanced, more healthy, you know, all of those wonderful things that we want. And I think those are big themes for this year. We've discovered kind of what unhealthy can be. And I think we've also discovered what healthy could be, maybe, right? A different, you know, things that organizations haven't had the courage to really do or ask. So we're in a time of great sort of change and innovation, I think, in truth telling. And I hope companies are getting the message that it just hasn't been enough the way that we've been functioning in the past. And, you know, we all know this on this call, but the memo has to get received. And then we need to develop different structures that do a better job of actually strengthening communities and individuals in addition to making money.
Absolutely. 100%. I couldn't have said that better myself. And I you know, we're trying to just take the best of what's coming out of this terrible moment right now and make it into something just spectacular. You hit it on the head. That's awesome.
Sarah, before we close out, can you tell people how to find you?
Of course. Yes. So our website is the easiest. It's resetco.org. And you can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the usual, all those platforms. But I would definitely hit the website and get on our mailing list if you haven't already.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. All right. Till next